Miso has already fallen asleep, so that just proves that I'm the world's greatest ASMR artist. Even the animals can't resist. I hope everybody is doing phenomenal. Before we get started, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment down below. And if you have your own spooky, scary experience that you would like to share with me to read in a future video, make sure to email this email right here, which is also available in the description down below. I only need a few more submissions before I can make a whole video of just subscriber experiences and stories, so please send me your stories. This is not a drill. With that being said, let's jump right into it. Tonight's spooky, scary Reddit asks, what is the scariest thing that you have ever encountered while home alone? Was in the shower when I heard the door to my apartment being unlocked. Husband wasn't due back for several hours. Turns out it was a skeevy-ass building manager snooping around people's apartments when he thought they were not home. Reported him to the company that owned the building, but nothing ever came out of it. Moved out shortly after. They should have fired him immediately. Like, it's just absolutely disgusting behavior, and I have such a fear of living in an apartment building, even though my dream is to live in a warehouse loft. We lived in a maisonette in London. We lived upstairs and a man was downstairs. He was banging at our door one day, screaming that his flat was being flooded from our bathroom, and we let him in. Well, I was 14 and my brother was 13. My mom was out. He came in, went into the bathroom, and did something. I don't know what. He was an adult and we trusted him. Well, Mom called the council out there, and there had never been a leak, no watermarks or anything, so Mom told us to never let him in again. Next time Mom went out, he came banging at the door again, and we told him what Mom said. He went ape shit. Let me fucking in. Let me fucking in. All the while banging on the door. God knows why he wanted in. Scary stuff. Oh my gosh. Like, I don't want them to invite this man back into their home, but if they were to invite him back, put a hidden camera in that bathroom. Yes. I was awoken from a deep sleep by the most horrifying high-pitched howling noise. We lived deep in a wooden area. I was familiar with sounds like foxes barking or even fishier, cats screaming, but this was eerie and didn't sound like an animal. Then it came from the other side of the house, but there was no sound of anything walking. You know how your mind isn't really logical when you first wake. I was convinced it was some terrible, otherworldly creature. In the morning, I checked some online recordings of sounds to figure it out. Turned out to be a tiny, harmless screech owl. Little guy can make some demonic sounds. The next story says, growing up, we had a large old mirror with a thick wood frame leaning against the wall in our hallway. I was doing some homework in the kitchen but got up to get something from the living room. The hallway is connecting the room between the two, so I passed through it, picked up whatever I needed in the living room, turned around, and was on my way back. And that old mirror is broken on the floor. It's shattered, pieces everywhere as if it had just exploded. It was completely fine when I passed it, just seconds before. I didn't hear it break. I just kind of walked by it and headed out to the kitchen door, scared the shit out of me. Ghosts are real, guys. Ghosts are real. Also, random, but are you so proud of me? I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I've never had a phone case on my phone. Until now. The she said. "Oh, I forgot to tell you, the gas meter guy was coming." Of course, the gas meter is right next to the window my brother and I always use to break in to our home when we forgot our keys. My dog was the only badass that day. The next story says, I was babysitting a family I was unfamiliar with. Okay, she's still sleeping. My parents knew them and suggested me when they needed a babysitter, as I liked having money, and I accepted. The kids go to bed, and I kill time, as one does before smartphones are a thing, by reading, I think. Maybe doing homework, but that seems unlikely. Anyways, I start to hear speaking from another room. Not just speaking, but this low, almost demonic voice speaking to another one. I'm not the religious sort, but when you realize that no, you're not just hearing things, there's definitely a voice, and it's more than just a little creepy. Not knowing what was going on, I slowly crept up to the doorway of the sitting room, then peered around the corner. Fucking Furbies talking to each other at night in the dark. Furbies suck. I can confirm this. Furbies do fucking suck. I had a Furby and it used to talk all the time without batteries in it. I'm not joking. Threw that bitch away. I was at a friend's house watching her cats, and suddenly someone stood on the balcony right when I walked down the hallway. I stopped dead and stood frozen for a few minutes, heartbeat in my throat. Turns out it was my reflection. Took me a solid 10 minutes. I have been scared by my reflection in shadow so many times. Like, I used to walk around my campus, go green, go white, Michigan State all the time by myself, and I would always get scared by my shadow, thinking somebody was following me because I'm paranoid as fuck. And I'm also a woman, and women have to be careful because we're women and people are crazy. I was babysitting my little sister. We were both watching television, and all of a sudden I hear gunshots and bullets ricocheting from the window security bars. A moment later I hear moaning and screaming coming from my front door. It was a drive-by shooting. 3 teenagers were shot up and managed to crawl to my door seeking help. As a 14-year-old at the time, it was something I was definitely not prepared to handle. Somebody commented, "Did they survive?" After everything, a detective came by and updated us that they lived. That's so intense, and I could not imagine. I was home alone since my husband was away on deployment. One night, as I was falling asleep, both my dogs and I heard someone on the front porch walking around. My dog flipped out, and I decided to go downstairs. I grabbed my gun out of the safe and headed downstairs first. About 2/3 down the way, I saw a man through the front door windows. We locked eyes and he said, "Let me in." I told him that he needed to leave. Again, he said, "Let me in." I told him he needed to leave and that I was calling the cops. "Let me in." I told him I had a gun. "So do I." And he lifted up the gun and aimed it at me. I fired my gun through the window but missed him. He ran off. The cops found him a few blocks from my house. A little bit later, his gun ended up not even being loaded. Still, the most terrifying shit ever. The next story says I was 11 and home alone. I got out of the shower to discover my house had been broken into. Teen from down the street and his sister stressed about the broken door than them touching her jar of change than anything else. The next story says, I was super high cleaning my apartment one day, probably around 1 p.m., so the music was up. I was in my zone. Then someone started slamming on the door. It kept going. I stopped the music, thinking that maybe it was just a neighbor who wanted me to turn the music down. I didn't feel like answering the door because 1, I smoked a fuck ton of weed, so that I was in no place to. I understand. And 2, COVID. I understand. Stop the music went quiet, but the aggressive knocking did not stop. So I looked through the people. Smaller girl, a bit bigger than my stature. Never seen her before, and I live in a complex with 6 units, so I know what my neighbors look like. But she kept knocking, being stupid. I opened the door. She just stared, asked where John was. I told her, I don't know. There's no John here. She just stood and stared at me, definitely on something. I tell her to try down the hall since I think there might be one that lives down there. I slowly go to close the door and she legit shoves her foot in the crack and starts to push. So I start to struggle back. We are both actually wrestling with this door. I just go, what? Can I help you? I'm just trying to close the door. She stops and relents a bit and does some weird eye shit and goes, oh, okay. And then walks off. Locked and bolted that fucker real quick. But yeah, don't open the doors to strangers. You know what? I've read so many stories about strangers knocking on people's doors, and when you answer it, you're just ambushed by a bunch of fucking people. So, yeah, really, truly, honestly, don't open your doors to strangers. And if you do, have that clock right on your hip, you know? Actually, just don't open the door. The next one is short and sweet. Got to experience heartburn for the first time while I was home alone. 100% thought I was going to die. The next story says, so one summer after my roommates went back home, I was living alone in a college apartment complex. One night I decided to go to the bars and then Uber home. Relatively safe college town. I had done this plenty of times before, and the city is pretty empty in the summer. I stepped out of the Uber and started walking up the stairs to my apartment when 2 men came down at the same time. My guess is they saw me exit the ride. They approached me and started complimenting me, asking for my number and where I was going. I brushed it off, but I really had nowhere else to go other than in my apartment, since my car keys were in there. So I reached the door and I was like, oh, my boyfriend lives here, he's inside waiting for me. And one of them said, no, you don't have a boyfriend, we've seen you alone, which was a major red flag, like major, but I had no other choice but to run inside. Now I know I probably should have called the cops here, but they left me alone, so I left it alone. Well, the next night, I was laying on my couch, which is directly in front of the front door, watching TV, when I started to hear the doorknob rattle, 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 rattle. Then I start to hear it get more forceful, and it sounds like someone is pushing on the door. as if somebody was walking towards me. It was scary, but I don't believe in ghosts, and I didn't see anybody coming, so I just brushed it off as a malfunction. Nah, bitch, you got ghosts. The next story says, I am an ex-Mormon, and I was in my 20s and living at home. My parents were out of town, and I had the whole house dark. I hear the doorbell ring and see a guy a little younger than me that I barely knew from my old ward standing beside a complete stranger I had never met. The stranger introduced himself as a new leader in the ward and said he wanted to come in and talk about the church. I declined and said goodbye and started to close the door. As I was closing the door, he put his foot in the way and tried to force his way into my house while telling me they were friends and that they just wanted to talk. I had to get more forceful with him and finally get him to leave. It was completely inappropriate for him to even be there, and even worse, he was trying to force his way into my house. And you know what? Sadly, he was probably using the kid to seem safe or make you feel safe. Horrible. When I was 12, a drunk neighbor tried winning back the affections of his ex by beating on her window with a plastic chair, shouting, "Come out here, you stupid bitch," at around midnight, then threatened to harm anyone who tried to stop him. I'm so glad chivalry is not dead. My house is on a high street, which in the UK is the main and the busiest road through most towns, so it's not unusual to have a lot of people passing and activity going on. Earlier that day, I had answered the front door for a delivery, unlocking it to do so, then go on with whatever I was doing after that. Much later in the day, as it was getting dark, I was upstairs in my bed watching Netflix when I heard the front door open. I assumed it was my mum coming home from work because it was around the right time. Spoiler alert, it wasn't my mum. So, the first thing that tipped me off to something being strange was the fact I couldn't hear her keys. She has a ridiculous amount of keys that you can hear from a mile off, and she's always struggling with them. Then I didn't hear her opening the door to the living room as she usually would do and greet the dogs. I also have to add at this point, I had 3 dogs and not one of them made a noise. The little shits. Some guard dogs they are. Then the third thing that made me freeze was the sound of footsteps very slowly and carefully coming up the stairs. Heavy sounding footsteps that very obviously didn't belong to my relatively small mum. So I'm lying in my bed learning the meaning of being paralyzed with fear when a big man's head appears around my door. And I can only assume he was as shocked to see me as I was to see him, because the next thing I heard was, "Sorry, wrong house," before he hauled himself down the stairs, a damn sight quicker than he had came in. The minute I heard the door shut, I was down those stairs, locking the door quicker than I'd ever done anything in my entire life, and safe to say, I make absolutely sure that door stays locked now. Okay guys, I'm gonna Okay. Going back to sleep. I'm gonna read a few more stories. When I was younger, probably 14 years old, I was playing hide and go seek with my brother, about 4 years old. I was hiding and he was taking quite a while to find me. I was hiding in about to say it was witching hour, so them ghosts be ghosting. I think that's going to be the last one for me tonight. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment, and send me those stories to this email right here. I swear, again, I only need a few more submissions, and then we can have a whole video just dedicated to your wonderful spooky scary stories. And to those who have sent